To order. Our hearing today is on the nomination by the President of Dr. John King to serve as the United States Secretary of Education. Senator Murray and I will have an opening statement, then we'll introduce the nominee. After Dr. King's testimony, senators will each have 5 minutes of questions. We especially welcome Bobby Scott from the House of Representatives, whose leadership played such a key role in the passage of the Every Child Succeeds Act. It would not have happened without him. He was forceful and diplomatic and oriented toward a result. So we admire that and appreciate his work on that, and I'll introduce him later to introduce Dr. King. And we welcome Dr. King's family, who I know are here, and I'll let him do the introducing of them at a later time. I'm very glad we're having this hearing today. When Senator Murray and I and Representative Scott and others were at the White House on December 10th for the signing of No Child Left Behind by President Obama, I urged the President to send to the Senate a nominee to succeed Education Secretary Arne Duncan. I did that because this is such an important year for schools. We need an Education Secretary who is confirmed and accountable to Congress while we're implementing a law that may govern elementary and secondary education for years to come. I want to be sure that we're working together to implement it as Congress wrote it. So congratulations on your nomination, Dr. King. And if you'll permit a personal note, this very month, 25 years ago, I was sitting in the same position that you're sitting today, having been nominated as U.S. Education Secretary by President George H.W. Bush. I remember thinking that the senators had deliberately set me way down there and them way up here, so I'd be intimidated by that. The hearing lasted 4 hours. We won't do that to you today, I don't think. My appointment was announced in December, but I wasn't confirmed until March 14th. What happened to me at the hearing, and my family was there like yours, I can remember it vividly. Senator Metzenbaum from Ohio said, "Well, Governor Alexander, I've heard some disturbing things about you." And I said, "Oh?" And he said, "But I'm not going to bring them up here today." And Senator Kassebaum leaned over and says, "Well, Howard, I think you just did." And he promptly put a hold on me, and I hung for about 2 months waiting for that to be lifted. I don't suspect you're going to have any of that sort of problem today. Senator Dan Coates, currently a senator, was on this committee then, and he said at that hearing 25 years ago, "Many of the states are way ahead of the federal government in terms of opening themselves up to more innovative solutions in education." That was true then, it's true today. When the President signed into law the Every Student Succeeds Act in December, he was signing a law that passed the United States Senate 85 to 12. 19 of the 22 members of this committee voted for it. I believe it's fair to say that every single member of this committee made some contribution to the result. We achieved the result because, as Newsweek said, this was a law that everyone wanted fixed, and fixing it was long overdue. Not only was there a consensus about the need to fix the law, there was a consensus about how to fix it. And the consensus, which we repeated over and over again, was this: continue the important measures of the academic progress of students, disaggregate the results of tests, and report them so everyone can know how the school, teacher, and children are doing, and then restore to states, school districts, and classroom teachers and parents the responsibility for deciding what to do about the tests and about improving student achievement. This new law is a dramatic change in direction for federal education policy. In short, it reverses the trend toward what, in effect, had become a national school board and restores to those closest to children the responsibility for their well-being and academic success. The Wall Street Journal called the new Every Student Succeeds Act, quote, "the largest devolution of federal control of schools from Washington back to the states in a quarter of a century," unquote. More importantly, I believe the new law can inaugurate a new era of innovation in student achievement by putting the responsibility for children back in the hands of those closest to them: the parents, the classroom teachers, principals, school boards, and states. The law is so important that the nation's governors gave it their first full endorsement of any piece of federal legislation in 20 years. The last time they did that was the Welfare Reform Bill in 1996. The law has the support of organizations that do not always see eye to eye. In fact, almost every education organization that supported the bill is already beginning to work together to help to implement it. We held a hearing with several of them on Tuesday. Those groups have formed a coalition made up of the following: the National Governors Association, the School Superintendents Association, the National Education Association, the American Federation of Teachers, the National Conference of State Legislators, the National Association of State Boards of Education, the National School Board Association, the Association of Elementary School Principals and of Secondary School Principals, the National Teachers Association, and it also has the support of the chief state school officers. Any of us who've been around education know that these groups do not always see eye to eye all the time, but they do on this bill. You already know this because they've sent you a letter in which they said, quote, "Although our organizations do not always agree, we're unified in our belief that ESSA, or as Senator Franken says, ESSA, is an historic opportunity." Well, that's your suggestion, right, for what we call it? Right. ESSA is an historic opportunity to make a world-class 21st century education system. And we're dedicated to working together at the national level to facilitate partnership among our members and states and districts to guarantee the success of this new law. Continuing their letter, the new law replaces a top-down accountability and testing regime with an inclusive system based on collaborative state and local innovation. For this vision to become a reality, we must work together to closely honor congressional intent. ESSA is clear. Education decision-making now rests with states and districts, and the federal role is to support and inform those decisions, unquote. I will include the letter in our record. The letter accurately reflects the consensus forged by these disparate organizations and by the Democrats and Republicans in Congress. The consensus ended the practice of granting conditional waivers through which the U.S. Department of Education has become, in effect, a national school board for more than 80,000 schools in 42 states. Governors have been forced to go to Washington and play Mother May I in order to put in a plan to evaluate teachers or help a low-performing school, for example. That era is over. This law ends what had become, in effect, a federal Common Core mandate. It explicitly prohibits Washington from mandating or even incentivizing Common Core or any other specific academic standards. It ends the highly qualified teacher definition and requirements, teacher evaluation mandates, federal school turnaround models, federal test-based accountability, and adequate yearly progress, because it moves decisions about whether schools and teachers and students are succeeding or failing out of Washington, D.C., and back to states and communities and classroom teachers where those decisions belong. This hearing provides Congress with the opportunity to ask questions, learn more about your background, and get your commitment to work with us if you are confirmed. My colleagues and I will have questions about such important issues as, should parents have the right to opt their children out of federally mandated tests? And how will you balance the new law's requirement on that important issue with deference to state and local decision-making? How will you manage the department's $1 trillion portfolio of student loans? How do you plan to deal with the issues raised by Congressman Chaffetz in the House about the security of information technology systems at your department? What are your plans for addressing the Office of Civil Rights practice of treating guidance issued without notice and comment as binding on our nation's college campuses on the serious issue of campus sexual assault? You have a distinguished career. You've been a public school student, a teacher, you founded a charter school, served as education commissioner in New York, a state of nearly 20 million, with responsibility for more than 7,000 public schools as well as 270 colleges and universities. You were delegated the duties of Deputy Secretary of Education by Secretary Duncan, and you are also the father of 2 children. You've seen our education system from nearly every angle. As you and I have discussed, I believe that if you are confirmed, we'll be able to work together not only to implement the new law governing elementary and secondary education, but that we can take some bipartisan steps which we've already begun in the committee, to make it easier and less expensive for students to go to college, and that we can begin to cut through the jungle of red tape that is strangling our 6,000 institutions of higher education. Many of these steps are well underway. They have broad support, and we should finish the job. So welcome to you and to your family. I look forward to hearing from you today. Our new Every Student Succeeds Act is an important change in direction and is excellent policy. It should provide a much-needed period of stability for federal policy in schools for several years. But we all know that a law is not worth the paper it's printed on unless it's implemented the way Congress wrote it. That's why I'm glad the President has appointed an Education Secretary who can be confirmed and be accountable to the United States Senate. And if you are confirmed, I look forward to working with you to help you and our new law succeed for the benefit of 50 million children, 3.5 million teachers in 100,000 public schools.